Good morning, YouTube. This is Matt Young. Alright, so I'm doing this video partly as a confession, but also just to kind of fill you in on some of the process that I'm doing. I'm wanting to figure out how I can best utilize my Greek and Hebrew. I went to seminary, went to grad school, and even took Greek in undergrad. And I recently calculated out how much money my wife and I spent for me to learn Greek and Hebrew. And the number was somewhere in the 10,000s. And if you include undergrad in that, then you're looking at anywhere between $15,000 and $16,000 were spent on me learning Greek and Hebrew. So I figured we're at this point now where I am too deep into Greek and Hebrew to not utilize it and to not get really good at it. That's something that I feel like the Lord has always continued to lay upon my heart, and I've just resisted, partly with excuses like, oh, I'm too busy, I don't want to. You know what? It's so much easier to read an English translation in the morning. And that's something that I think needs to change. That's something in my life where I've been given such an immense gift of knowing Greek and Hebrew, and I have all the tools in which to get really good at it, hypothetically speaking at least. I need to actually utilize those tools to the best of my ability. And so that's what I'm going to be doing for however long. I hope that this is a lifelong journey. Let's just be honest. My heart is pretty darn fickle, and it's pretty darn flaky. And so let's, hopefully this is a cool journey that I get to document on my channel and everything. But let me just walk you through real quick what it is I'm thinking of doing in order to make this happen. All right? Okay. So these are all the tools that I've got. As you can tell, I went ahead and these are brand new note cards or flashcards. The reason why I got flashcards is because my biggest struggle, as is with probably a lot of people who do original languages or just any language. If you're learning Spanish, it's the same thing. Vocab is crucial in order to actually use the language, because if you don't have a vocabulary, you're going to be looking up every other word, and it's just going to kill you in the long run. And really, the hope is not fluency. The hope is that you're able to use it. And so what I'm going to be doing, and what I have been doing for the last week or so, is I've been taking some flashcards every single day, and I've just been going through them. So this morning I've got my 5 flashcards, and because these are all at the very beginning of the stack. So these are all words that I've known at one point in time, so a lot of this is review. Once I get a few hundred words in though, that's when it's going to be really hard. So my process is I go through what I've already done. So this is a stack of 25 right now. I'll go through this, or if I'm looking at my Greek flashcards, I've already gone through them. I go and I add my 5 or my 3. Once it starts getting harder and I'm not knowing the words as often, I'm going to just start using 3, and I keep these with me all day. I'll put them in my shirt pocket, my dress shirt pocket when I go to work and when I'm just kind of doing errands, and then that way if there's ever a stale moment, instead of pulling out my phone, I'm pulling out a flashcard and I'm just internalizing it as best as I can. Really getting to know the word, get to see the word. This is something I didn't do in grad school, so my Hebrew is terrible. It's actually a real big shame that I was able to get by in these classes with the little that I knew. I guess I knew enough to pass. I knew enough to do well by an academic standard. I didn't know the language. And so that was really frustrating. Every time I'd go to it, it was just drudgery. And so as a result, I graduated over a year ago at this point in time. and I've barely used my Greek or Hebrew. So that's kind of not great, that I had all this training, and now all of a sudden 365 days have gone by and I've barely even used it or tried to use it. I tried to use it like pretty early on, especially in sermon prep, and just found it just killed my timing. I'm an assistant pastor at our church, and so preaching and teaching is not one of my main duties. On a Sunday morning in the pulpit. Rather, a lot of what I do is one-on-one discipleship, small group discipleship, and mobilizing and programming our missions and outreach and discipleship processes and programs at our church. And so I'm not up there teaching every week. If I was, maybe this would be different, but the reality is that that's not what the Lord has called me to do, and I actually really like what I do. I don't have to be an expert of the text for the sake of teaching other people, but if I don't develop a discipline now to really become a scholar and an expert of the text and allow it to master my heart, there's just this honest reality that I don't know if the Lord could always use me. The Lord can always use anybody. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to stand before him on Judgment Day with a clean conscience and say, you know what, Lord, I did my best. I prepared myself the best that I could for the sake of your kingdom. And that's really what this is all about. Back to this, though. So I just add a few flashcards a day. If I can only get through one or two because it's a hard word, I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to go over all the flashcards I've learned. And so the hope would be that I'd eventually get to stacks of 100. There's 1,000 flashcards in each of these boxes. And so if I can get to working up to all 1,000, where, I've got a stack of 100 and I just do one stack of 100 a day. And I just do that 5 days a week. I can use Saturday and Sunday to work on words that I'm struggling through. I'll probably create a stack of words that I just have a really hard time getting. So I work on those a lot more. But the hope would be that I'd get to the point where I just go through this stack once every 2 weeks. That will probably take a number of years to get up to, but that's the hope. Really, at the end of the day, that's the hope with these. Okay, so those are flashcards, which are awesome. You can buy these on Amazon. I'll put a link down below. If you want to learn Greek and Hebrew, you've got to first off buy these. They're Bill Mounts and Miles Van Pelt and Gary Practico. They're awesome. Zondervan did a great job on these cards. It feels like these cards are actually better than the ones that I had when I was in undergrad. Ones I had felt paper thin and they just deteriorated really fast. These are the Hebrew and Greek textbooks that I got when I was in graduate school at Seminary. This is an intermediate Greek grammar by David Matheson and Elodie Imig. These were my Greek professors, and they were awesome. They take a minimalist approach to Greek grammar. That's just a linguistic term for, if you guys have heard of the phrase Holy Spirit Greek, where there's like this special kind of Greek, and every word and sentence is encoded with all of this deep theological meaning. They would say, yes, while the text has a deep meaning, there's nothing special about Greek, though. It's just Greek. It's another language, and so they take a stance that really, hey, Greek is just another language, so we're going to teach it like that. And they grasp what's called verbal aspect theory. So they're starting to really get down on this rather than kind of the older way of Greek, where it was like, man, if this is an aorist, then this verb is means this, or if it's present, that means it's present for all times and places. And it's like, no, not really. Aorist is just the default tense. And then if you see a present tense verb in the midst of aorist, that means that the author's trying to draw your attention to that, just like you would with a number of other languages during that time period. I got this grammar. This is a Hebrew grammar. Where shall wisdom be found? And my Hebrew professor really didn't like the name of it because you would never know that this was a Hebrew textbook. But Helene Dallaire, she was my Hebrew professor in grad school, as well as Rick Hess, both great scholars, great teachers. But this is a really great resource. I got this during my third semester of Greek, so I recognize it, but it's not used up, and it's very technical. It's very technical, so I'm going to have to read through this a number of times. But I've always heard that if you go back to the textbooks that you learned in originally, you're going to actually, your recall is going to be way better. So these are the books I'll be using. I'm going to be using these a little later on. Right now, I really am just working on vocab acquisition. I'm just trying to get really good at the vocab. And this is where this next resource really comes in. This is another thing I'm doing periodically. So I think I've done a review on this Bible already. This is a Reader's Hebrew and Greek Bible. Now, what's great about this Bible is that, and then this is also a really cool card, but I won't do that yet. It's cheaply made. This Bible is not going to last long, and I've contemplated taking my BHS compact version and get a Nestle Elan text, and then see if someone rebind it into one Bible. That'd be great because of the fact that if we do that, it's essentially the same thing. So the Greek text, this is the Greek text used for the NIV, which only differs from the UBS text in like 200 places, and they're all minor. It's all like a pronoun here, a chi there, nothing too technical. But what makes this Bible special is that when you're reading it, you'll see that you've got your Greek text, kind of in a funny font. I don't like the font, but that's besides the point. And you'll hit, like a hypocritai. Well, what does that mean? Hypocritai. Where is that? So you got a footnote for number 7. So I jump over to number 7. Okay, it's hypocrite. So hypocrite or pretender. And so these are words that occur less than 30 times in the New Testament. I'll actually be hitting, in the New Testament at least, with that Greek vocabulary set, I'll actually be hitting some of these less than 30, which is cool. So I'll need this less and less. But the hope would be, too, that for some of these words that occur less than 30 times, I would actually start making new flashcards for. Just that way I can learn them and get to know them. I'd love to get to learn every word, of the Greek text, because there's only like 5,000 words or something like that in the Greek New Testament, in terms of words that are used. Anyway, so, and what, at least right now, because I'm still working on language acquisition or vocab acquisition, what I do is I just read it out loud. So I'm getting the flow, I'm getting to know how Greek feels, at least as I'm reading, and I just read a paragraph. And as I'm reading a paragraph, I'll say out loud kai and even also namely. Those are the glosses for that word. And I just work on identifying these different words as I go by them. Because that's just going to help overall with, recognizing them in context. And then as I, get to know the text better and have some more vocab, and I'm reworking my grammar, then that's when I'm going to be able to really start reading the text more. I'd love to get to the point where I'm able to read this at half the speed that I can read, an English translation. If I can do one page in, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. It's the same thing with the Hebrew. I think the Hebrew portion, these are actually 2 volumes put together in one. I think the Hebrew version of this was done way better. So you've got, your Hebrew, you're reading from right to left, well, top to bottom still, but it's the same deal, and it's every word that occurs less than 100 times, because obviously if you've got however long, the Hebrew Bible took to get put together, you're looking at 1,500 years of history going on. That's a lot of vocabulary change. And they're an oral culture, so their language was a little more, well, I'm not even going to say anything about their language because I'm not an expert or a scholar on that. I don't want to lead anybody astray on that. So same deal, take a paragraph, and the Hebrew's a little different. You've got this little symbol, which kind of signals a paragraph break. So you'd go from verse 7 until you see your next one, which is right here. And so that'd be a paragraph. So verses 7 to 14 is just one paragraph. So you, again, read it out loud, get to know the text, get to hear the text in your own ear, get to form the words with your mouth, and also just being able to identify the words in their context as I read them is huge. And again, if I can work through one page in less than 30 minutes, that would just be amazing. I'd love to be able to get to that point. But yeah, so that is kind of my journey that I'm going to be doing, hopefully for a lifetime. I hope that this is something I actually get into. Again, this is just a confession of a, not ex, I didn't drop out or anything like that, but just another seminary student who graduated and hasn't used the tools that God has given them, unfortunately, to further his kingdom to the best of my abilities. And it's not necessarily to my shame or anything, but it's just a reality that, man, for what we've been given, we have to really be sure to use what the Lord has given us to the best of our abilities, to further his kingdom. And because of the fact that, I've spent not just, if you look at the money, 15 grand for learning Greek and Hebrew and then not using it, that is, first off, ridiculous. Secondly, the amount of time I spent just to get good enough to pass the classes, that's another time resource, that's another expense resource, that's been put into this. I'm too deep in to not be using this every day. I'm too deep in to not utilize this for the purpose of ministry, for the purpose of getting to know the Lord more deeply. Why? And obviously using lots of English translations to supplement my everyday. Ideally, that'd be great, but really, it's like, man, if I could just get down to the original and start using that more, that'd be pretty epic. So, okay, love you guys. Thanks for watching. Weird video, but stick around, and I'll post. Maybe I won't post a part 2 or anything. Maybe there won't be anything beyond this one video. So, all right, YouTube, have a great day. And if you know Greek or Hebrew, go use your Greek or Hebrew. Other than that, pray a lot, spend some time in the Word, and just continue to love the Lord. So have a good one.